You know what's interesting about people who never buy anything at full price? They don't just look different from regular shoppers. They think differently. And when you actually look at what's happening inside their brain, it starts to make a lot of sense. Because the person who spends 45 minutes comparing prices across 6 different websites before buying a $12 item isn't being irrational. Their brain is doing something very specific. And once you understand what that is, you'll never look at a clearance rack the same way again. Let's start with the most fundamental thing psychology tells us about this behavior. It's not actually about money. That might sound counterintuitive because these people obsess over savings. They know when Black Friday starts. They have coupon apps. They check the price history of a product before clicking buy. But consumer psychologist Kit Yarrow at Golden Gate University put it simply. What bargain hunters are really chasing is the thrill of feeling like they scored a victory. The discount is almost secondary. What they want is the feeling that comes from winning. And here's where neuroscience becomes really interesting. When someone finds a great deal, their brain releases dopamine. That's the same neurotransmitter involved in eating something delicious, receiving a compliment, or solving a puzzle. But the release isn't triggered by saving money. It's triggered by the anticipation and the moment of discovery, the hunt itself. Research actually shows that this dopamine response is more pronounced in people who are already more sensitive to financial rewards, which is why some people are completely indifferent to a sale, while others will drive across town for 15% off. And it gets more interesting than that. A study published in the Journal of the Association for Consumer Research found that around 70% of the variability in deal proneness, meaning how strongly someone is wired to seek discounts, is associated with genetic factors, not just how you were raised, your actual DNA. Think about that for a second. The reason your aunt collects coupons while your cousin doesn't may literally be written in their biology. But genetics are only part of the picture, because there's another layer to discount-seeking behavior that most people never notice. It's about control. Psychologists who study financial anxiety consistently find that during periods of economic uncertainty, people don't just become more careful with money, they become more compulsive about seeking deals. And the reason is fascinating. When life feels unpredictable, when the future feels unstable, finding a bargain creates a small but very real sense of power. You're not just saving $2. You're telling yourself, I have some control over this situation. I'm managing something even when everything around me feels unmanageable. Bargain hunting becomes a coping mechanism, a quiet way of restoring equilibrium when the world feels off balance. Now here's something that should make you pause, because this is where the psychology gets genuinely complicated. Not all discount seekers are the same. Psychologists generally observe two distinct profiles. The first is the strategic saver. This person uses discounts as a tool. They wait for a sale on something they genuinely need. They plan, they compare. Their behavior actually reduces unnecessary spending. The discount is serving its intended purpose. The second profile is the deal addict. And this person isn't saving money at all, even though that's exactly what they believe they're doing. They buy things because they're on sale, not because they need them. They get a dopamine hit from the act of purchasing a discounted item. And here's the uncomfortable truth that experts keep coming back to. If you buy something you weren't planning to buy, the discount didn't save you money. It cost you money. Even 50% off is still 50% spent on something you didn't need. But here's the thing nobody talks about. These two profiles can exist in the same person at different times, sometimes even during the same shopping trip. And a big reason for that is something behavioral economists call the anchoring effect. When you see a price tag that says was $120, now $65, something very specific happens in your brain. That original price becomes an anchor, a reference point. Your brain doesn't evaluate whether $65 is a fair price for the item, it evaluates the gap. It compares 65 to 120, and suddenly the object feels like a bargain, regardless of its actual value. Research from Kahneman and Tversky showed that this kind of anchoring is almost impossible to consciously override. It's not a failure of intelligence, it's a feature of how human cognition works. Retailers, of course, know this perfectly well. Some original prices are inflated specifically to create this effect. Combined with something called loss aversion, another concept from Tversky and Kahneman, and you have a genuinely powerful psychological cocktail.
Loss aversion means that losing something feels roughly twice as bad as gaining something feels good. So when a limited time offer is expiring, when a sale ends at midnight, when you see only 3 items left in stock, your brain doesn't process that as a neutral deadline. It processes it as a threat, a potential loss. And suddenly you're not shopping, you're trying to avoid pain. This is the architecture behind almost every major retail event you've ever participated in. The countdown timers, the red sale tags, the phrases like "don't miss out" or "last chance." They're not just marketing language, they're precise psychological levers designed to activate specific neurological responses. So what does all of this actually reveal about someone who always looks for discounts? Here's what the research suggests, and it might not be what you expect. These people aren't necessarily cheap. They aren't necessarily anxious or financially insecure. Many of them are simply people with a brain that's highly responsive to reward systems. And quite often, they're also people who derive genuine meaning from a sense of competence, the ability to navigate the market intelligently, to find the better deal, to not be fooled, to come out ahead. It touches something that goes beyond money. It touches identity. There's something almost primal about it, actually. Evolutionary psychologists point out that humans spent the vast majority of their history as hunter-gatherers, scanning environments for resources, identifying what was worth pursuing and what wasn't. The person who found the most efficient path to food and shelter wasn't just lucky, they were skilled. And that sense of skill still lives somewhere in the modern brain. It just expresses itself differently now, through coupon codes instead of foraging trails. But there's also a quiet warning built into all of this. Because when the behavior stops being a strategy and starts being a compulsion, when someone can't buy something at full price without feeling genuinely uncomfortable, when they get a rush from a purchase that fades almost immediately and requires them to go looking again, that's not financial wisdom anymore. That's the same reward loop that makes slot machines so difficult to walk away from. Intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards, a mechanism that the brain finds deeply compelling and extremely hard to interrupt. And here's what all of this points to, which matters far beyond shopping. The psychology of discount seeking isn't really a story about price tags. It's a story about how the human brain navigates uncertainty, control, identity, and reward. The same cognitive architecture that makes someone a skilled deal finder can also make them a compulsive one. The line between the two is thinner than most people realize, and often the most important question isn't whether you got a good price. It's whether the thing you bought was actually worth wanting in the first place. Because the most expensive purchases many people ever make are the ones that felt like a bargain at the time. And maybe that's the most quietly fascinating part of all of this. In a world engineered to make you feel like you're winning by spending, the most powerful thing you can do is pause long enough to ask whether you actually wanted to play the game.